I'll be chairing this meeting. Please can I ask committee members and the officers to introduce themselves. This is for the benefit of any public viewers online.
Tanya Patchett, Head of Employee Relations, Business Partners and Reward.
Dan Paul, Chief People Officer.
Ellen Matheson Harley, Principal Lawyer, Employment, Education and Criminal Litigation.
Councillor Dawn Barnes.
Councillor Liam Carroll, White Hart Lane.
Councillor Dogan, Bruce Castle Ward.
Thanks everyone. Move on to agenda item 1, filming at meetings. Please refer to the notice set out on the agenda and note this information. Thank you. Moving on to item 2, apologies for absence. There are no apologies for absence. Item 3, items of urgent business. We have no items of urgent business. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. There are none, but please let us know if you become aware of any during the meeting. Item 5, deputations, petitions and questions. There are none, so we will move on. Item 6, the minutes of the previous meeting which have been circulated to members. Does anyone have any comments regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Please can we agree the minutes of the 14th October meeting?
We agree.
Yes.
Minutes are agreed. Item 7 is the pay policy statement 2025 to 26. The council is required to produce an annual pay policy statement to comply with the requirements of the Localism Act 2011. Council approved its last pay policy statement at full council on the 24th of March 2024. Dan Paul, Chief People Officer, will introduce this decision-making report and I will invite questions. Yes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. As the Chair said, this is the annual pay policy report. The Council has produced such a report for many years now, and this report contains no substantive changes to the previous policy, which we have run for many years. We have updated ratios as required by the Localism Act 2011, and we have made some small clarifications. I would draw members' attention to a clarification. The last sentence of paragraph 3.4, which is on page 7 of your agenda pack, which simply clarifies the rest of the paragraph really, and just notes that the Chief Executive may decide not to authorise pay progression for any senior manager in any given year, which just it clarifies the intention of the paragraph, but makes it very clear what the delegation to the Chief Executive is. And that is really my introduction. There are no substantive changes to this policy as you have approved in previous years.
Okay, thank you. Do committee members have any questions?
Just for my understanding. So just go back to 3.4. So does that mean that Chief Executive Officer, if they take a position that impact all the pays within the council organisation, how that's going to work out?
Yeah, it could impact any or all. So depending on the situation in any given year, the Chief Executive may decide not to authorise pay progression for any senior manager or a cohort of senior managers, or may take an in-principle decision to authorise pay progression, but then it's based on organisation or team or individual performance. So it's not automatic.
Yeah.
I think your question might be about the wider organisation.
Yes.
This part only applies to senior managers.
Senior man, not
This is
Not
just
the wider
senior manager.
organisation.
So no, just for clarification, yeah, the paragraph 3 in general is remuneration arrangements for the Chief Executive, corporate directors and heads of service.
Yeah.
So they are our most senior managers in the organisation, and that is to whom all of paragraph 3 applies.
All of the grades up to that point are governed by the National Pay Agreement, so it's not affected.
That's why I'm in the question.
Well, can I just say that's a really good thing to include. It means that performance is formed for senior managers.
Right.
I did have a question around 3.5. It said, may engage employees under contracts for services provision coordinator in excess of £500 per day, and that would be on the council website. There's two things. One is, because I haven't seen the rest of the papers, I didn't understand how many you have at the moment who are £500 a day. That's one thing. And two, I guess I was curious now because of this budgetary situation. And what people are we appointing at £500 a day? Because it's actually quite a significant amount. I mean, if I think of as a council taxpayer, you know, I'm looking at the website and thinking, why £500 a day? It's quite hefty. And I wondered whether, in the light of the current situation, whether we should have it lower, so that we have better accountability on who is getting that level of salary. I'm just curious about that.
No, that's fine. So I think there are two different issues there. This paragraph in particular deals only with people engaged under contracted services. So this isn't agency workers, this isn't employees. This is people engaged directly and paid directly. The £500 per day, it isn't a threshold that the council has set. That's a threshold set by the government of the amounts which we must publish into our costs. So the separate question, if you don't mind, I'll pick up under the next report, which is the people report, which contains data on agency workers who earn more than £500 a day. So it might be better to pick that question up under the next report.
Doesn't apply to agency workers, does it? I thought this
No.
applied to, right, so that's completely separate.
That is separate. Agency workers aren't paid directly, so
Right.
we do not engage agency workers under
Right,
contracted
this is direct.
services.
So do we know how many people are directly employed who get £500 or more a day, which was your question, I
Yeah.
think.
Well,
But the next report is.
But that's about agency workers.
yeah, and this isn't about employees. This is under contract for services. So most of our employees are not engaged.
Right?
Yeah. As I don't know the answer to the question, but this is not usual. When we engage employees, we either employ them directly or we engage them as agency workers, neither of which fall under this definition. So this is an unusual thing to happen.
Ask, why is it called employees? Because they're not actually employees, they're contractors, are they not?
Point.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think yes. Engage contractors under contract for services. Yes, I think you make a very fair point, councillor. I think would be happy if the committee is happy to change 3.5 in the first line, the word employees to contractors. I think it'd be more reflective of the actual situation.
Yeah, because it sounds like
Yep.
you're employing existing council staff to do extra work.
Yep, it does.
It
does sound-
£500 a day.
It does sound like that, and we're
very
not.
small circumstance, that could be the case, right? You could employ someone just as it is already. I mean, it's unlikely, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility. But the change is
Yeah,
more flexible.
that's right. And it is contractors we mean.
Okay.
It's yeah, I'm surprised I hadn't noticed that before, councillor. But you know these reports that come up every year that you never notice the difference. This is one of those. So I absolutely agree. And if the committee were minded to agree that change, then we'd be very happy to make it.
Do we want to agree that?
I think.
I think so. Yeah. Any more? Yeah. Indeed. Any more questions?
I suppose I have a question
Councillor
that
Carroll.
isn't. It's under section 9, which obviously I know is not the any substantive changes to it.
That's right.
But under 9.3, which is the criteria under which basically additional payments to meet a salary level that someone might accept a job that we're finding hard to apply for. Sort of, it says someone has to meet one or more criteria in that regard. And it strikes me that one is almost certainly going to be there in nearly every case, because if you put out the original salary level, I'm not saying a surplus of requirements, because that's one part there that if you want to advertise it, we initially feel fits within the rest of the organisation first. But it strikes me that there is a possibility that you can almost say, where there is evidence of the first point there, the post has been advertised for more than one occasion and a suitable applicant cannot be recruited, and then one of the others as well. I don't see any circumstance, although actually in circumstances I can see where you might actually know you're not going to be able to recruit at the regular level. But it strikes me if you've been out of advertisement, one of the other criteria is probably inherent within
Yeah.
it. So it's my question, although is in your understanding experience, when you're going out to advertisement, is it a case that normally is more closed?
Yes, you're quite right, councillor. Accept that as well. So the three criteria are the three that follow that. So that the first bullet point should be within the first part of 9.3. So if I said something like a market allowance is deemed suitable where the post has been advertised on more than one occasion, a suitable applicant should not be recruited, and where there is evidence of one or more of the following, and then the following three bullet points, that would much more accurately describe what happens. And we are very happy, if the committee is happy, to make that change as well, because that's a point for accuracy that's really important. And again, this has been in place for a number of years and we haven't spotted it. So I'm really grateful for the detailed reading of the policy.
Actually, to follow on from that myself, as far as I know, I've done a lot of recruitment as part of my role as chair of this committee in recent times. And as far as I know, that this pay benchmarking exercise is carried out pretty much every time, certainly over a certain level. I don't know if you could clarify that for us, but it seems to be certainly pretty frequent, this benchmarking exercise. Looking at other local authorities and market analysis.
So any market supplement that we consider does go to our internal process of statutory officers group for consideration, and all of this has to be presented as part of that. So they have to complete a complete business case, which talks about how often it's been advertised in a set period of time, where it's been advertised, what the salary it was advertised at, what other local authorities, but also private sector employers are paying for those same roles that are comparative, and all of those things are considered before that decision is made.
I suppose following on from that, again, forgive me for this one. It strikes me that in sectors where there is a shortage of workers willing to do the job, especially at the sort of standard level we would normally pay, actually wouldn't we be saving time by doing some of the market allowance in advance of advertising it the first time, so that we are in a higher chance in certain circumstances? I think the business case fulfills those requirements. Actually, that first one, which you say is the way it typically happens, wouldn't we actually be giving yourselves and the organisation more flexibility, which might help you in your work, if we remove the first criteria, that actually you don't have to go out to advert at the standard level before having market allowance on top? Now, the case has to be made and it would have to be justified. You guys, the experts here, advise me whether that would be in conflict with anything else that we are tied into or agreed. But I actually think there's a justification for removing that, because actually we're saving ourselves time. If we're going out to advert, having to do a full advertisement at a level we almost certainly know we're not going to be able to hire at. In certain sectors, like I can imagine off the top of my head, chart surveyors comes. Lots of demand and not less. Actually, we're putting more legwork. We're making you do two periods of recruitment where one might be quicker and more effective. I don't know how the committee feels about that, but I'm interested in your response.
I guess you're partly right. However, we don't always know what candidates' motivations are working for Haringey, and there might be something completely unrelated to the money. Why people want to work for this particular council. It might suit them personally. There might be all sorts of reasons. And if our market supplements get challenged, the ultimate test is if we are challenged on why we're going market supplement by somebody at the same grade. So why did you give that person a market supplement, not me? I want to have absolute cast iron evidence that these things apply. And we tried to recruit somebody at the substantive grade before we gave a market supplement. We tried really hard because the bar for setting a market supplement or giving market supplement is quite high. And Tanya talked about the internal board that approves these. By no means do they all get approved. It is not a notification process or a really easy admin process. These are tough things that you get asked, and the bar is really high. We've evaluated all of these jobs on our scheme, and the way we evaluate jobs ensures that we pay people equal pay for work of equal value. Now, market supplements, as this policy says, are justified in certain conditions. The bar has to be tough to meet, so I would prefer to leave that condition.
We're satisfied with the answer. That's what
But actually, I'm noting that it doesn't have to be advertised. It just needs to be one or more. So it doesn't have to be advertised. So if there is a known skills shortage, which is one of the other criteria, then they could move to benchmarking. And yeah, I think you're right to raise it, because I think in the current climate we don't want to waste money on recruitment when we don't need to.
Yeah, I'm happy to approve that.
Okay. Are there any more questions on comments? Well, thank you very much. We'll now move to the recommendations that are set out at page 3 of the agenda pack. Please can we approve and note the report? Oh, and with the additional recommendations as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, we now move to item 8, which is the people report. People report is designed to give officers and members relevant workforce data in an easy to understand format in order to support informed strategic decision making. Dan Paul will introduce this noting report. Invite questions from the committee. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. This is a regular people report that we bring at every meeting, providing the committee with statistics on our workforce. You'll see in the introduction there's some points to note. There have not been major changes, but the things I would really point out for interest here is that on the appendix, which is page 19 of your agenda pack, over the period December 23 to September 24, there has been a steady increase in the number of employees delivering services to the people of Haringey, from 3,111 in December 23 to 3,210 in September 24. So there's been a steady increase there. The number of agency staff are decreasing. So you'll see the headcount decreasing from 607 now to 527. And that reflects the significant effort that management are putting into reducing the number of agency staff that works for the council, that I know have been a matter that we've discussed in this committee before. And you can see that the efforts that management are putting in there are bearing fruit. We don't stop here, so this continues, and I would hope and expect that in future reports you'll see further reductions, because I know it's a core priority for this council. And in answer to your question on the previous report, Councillor Hammond, this is where we also report the number of interims and consultants who we engage who earn £500 or more a day. That number now sits at 68. It is reducing from 75 in December 23, but management realised there is more to go on this. And again, efforts on reducing that number will be redoubled.
So it's the section that's headed
Of payroll workforce.
On page 19.
That's the one. Yeah, so it's reducing over the period. It's got shifted about a bit, 75, 67, 66, 68. You know, these numbers are quite sensitive. 1 or 2 either way is quite difficult to draw any conclusions from. But you'll note the reduction and the commitment that managers are making to reduce that even further. And the other thing that I'll point out is the reduction over the period in sickness absence, that we are now moving on to page, I forgot which page I said, page 20 of the report. Again, a reduction from 11.4 days per FTE to 10.6 days per FTE in September 24. The final thing I'd point out, just back to my point about the established workforce increasing, is obviously the financial situation of the council is extremely difficult. And so what I wouldn't expect is for those numbers to continue increasing over time because of the financial issues that we face. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question on page 20 about apprentices.
Mhm.
So I look at the table. So it's going up and then it's going down. Do we know why? For example, June the intake was, let's say, 33, but in September 29, and then you got the figures going down. Do we know why?
Yeah, so these are going to fluctuate. Most of the numbers in this report are existing employees undertaking apprenticeship qualifications.
Mhm.
So they undertake qualification, they finish it.
Yep.
Therefore, they are no longer undertaking an apprenticeship and don't appear in the figures. And then other employees start. So this is this is more of a wave. But if you look at the trend, we're kind of from 132 to 107. We had a lot starting apprenticeships back in the previous reporting period, and then some have finished their apprenticeships and we're down slightly to 148. So this is always going to be up and downs as people start and complete apprenticeships.
So we'd expect the quarter thereafter, which was what, June 24, to then increase again? Depends on the uptake.
Yeah, it's not necessarily
Okay.
it's not necessarily up, down, up, down, up, down.
Okay.
But I guess the trend is generally upwards. So if I was to show you report, or if you were to look for reports from previous years, you'd see lower numbers. So the trend is a general upward trend, which is good. But it does reflect the needs at the time for various services and the apprenticeships that our employees want to do and the training that they want to undertake.
Can I just ask another follow up on this? So when they complete their apprenticeship program at the council, is there a kind of avenues for them to move about within the council work, like the jobs that they want to apply for? And do we have figures that if they have been successful on those jobs, if when they applied, do we know that there's a continuity within the workforce to move on to other areas of the council, particularly in relation to apprenticeship programs that when they complete?
Yeah, so we don't have that data, but we do know that, like I say, many of these many of these figures are employees undertaking career development qualifications, and they do so to further their careers to either within the council or elsewhere. But we have a good record of retaining our apprentices, but I don't have specific figures on what has happened to each of these apprentices, and that will be quite difficult to collect at these volumes.
We have fewer people who come into the organisation specifically on an apprenticeship programme for a fixed period of time.
Yeah.
And then more people are already employed that then undertake an apprenticeship to increase their qualifications. So they already remain within the organisation. I'd be confident to say the majority of those people do then progress in their own career. And certainly when it comes to restructure, we find that those people who have completed apprenticeships compete better for some of those roles within the new structure. But I think one of the things that we have as part of workforce planning is the increase in entry-level apprentices, which I think is what councillors will be interested in, is the increase in that younger workforce. So what we'll try to start doing is look at that as a separate entity, because obviously when they reach the end of an apprenticeship, you have to then look at what is the through flow into other roles. So at the moment we don't have that because of the fact that the majority of those apprentices are existing workforce as opposed to new entry.
I think that's really important in terms of providing opportunities for that group of population of people able to gain experience, a bit of money, but also help them to move forward in their career. And if they have the opportunity, my past experience tells me, which it's been great for the people that when I used to do a bit of similar supervising apprentices, they were able to succeed when they had the opportunity.
Yep.
And just as an example, within HR, we've actually appointed 3 new apprentices within our own structure at that entry level that we've advertised at entry level to bring people in for exactly that reason. And so we're trying to lead the way on that in terms of activity. We're going through the shortlisting process now.
That sounds really positive. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions?
Follow up, Councillor Grover's. Wondering whether we should maybe monitor 10 as an example. I'm just, on the kind of progress business. And it would be nice if the services provided a bit of a little summary of one or two. They don't have to provide the whole book, but just kind of get a feel for what's going on around there. But I think monitoring just 10 or 5 even, as you wish, but I think it would be a good idea to kind of see what happens to them all.
I guess the issue there would be, I'm just thinking about how would we choose? It feels like,
If you choose
Pick it.
5 at random or beginning with B or something like that.
let me have a think about it, councillor. Let me think about how that might work.
They might also self-select if they're asked. So if you ask all of them, there might be some that put themselves forward and some that would prefer not to be.
Yeah.
But then that also means if
That would
they're
introduce bias into the
self-selecting,
process.
if they're self-selecting, then that usually is for a specific reason. If they want to show how good they are or they want to raise complaints. So I think it really needs to be all or random.
And all on those numbers with the
Would be a lot
resources that
more.
I have to measure it is very difficult.
Thinking that they have to be impartial in any way at all. I was just thinking for us, it gives us a real feel for what happens to people. All we do is keep the stats and you don't get the person.
Perhaps if we ask employees if they're willing to write kind of a case study.
Yeah, case study.
And bring a few of those. Yeah.
Case study sounds.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask to do don't relate to the topic, apprenticeships, but considering in more entry level of specific vacancies that we've struggled to fill, could look to provide apprenticeships in, or is it more as well, maybe further into their careers and more established in the workforce, not necessarily this workforce, but in general, that those are a large proportion of those people who are currently at this age.
To do both, councillor. So one of the tasks that we have our services to do as part of their workforce planning is to look at where they can introduce specific question, where you can introduce apprentices into your workforce and replace agency staff with apprentices, grow our own strategy into our workforce of the future. So that's one of the things that we are actively looking at this year as part of workforce planning.
And I think in a way it sort of links into Kushika's maybe the second way of actually having these case studies about most of it has been to have sort of duality of good at getting that second. We prove every wave of apprentices that we can, of course.
And one of the things we highlight in this report is starters and leavers under 40, which you'll notice, and that's because we're actively promoting opportunities to younger people into our workforce to improve those demographics. So apprentices really is an opportunity for us to do that. So the more we do with our services, so the team that I look after, HR Business Partners, deliver on workforce planning, and there's a specific section on apprentices as part of that new workforce planning. So we're really proactively asking people to think about how they can bring in those younger people into the workforce at entry level roles to grow their own into the organisation to prevent there being gaps further down the line. So it would be really interesting. I'd be really interested to track their progress.
Let's tackle. Do we know? So I can imagine that the proportion of, depending on how young they start, but I can imagine the proportion of young people potentially drawn from other than necessarily the wider workforce in general. Do you have any indication about how that works? Are our apprentices? I mean, the great thing about London is actually it's so easy to move between, but what proportion of the apprentices do you know? Do you anticipate?
Yeah, so typically you're quite right. Typically, our apprentices are more local than the wider employee base. I don't have specific figures for you, but you're right in your assumption that apprentices are more likely to be local people than recruits from a wider.
Not that I don't want to say that people. Yeah, I don't like it.
Again,
Local,
But
but
actually, the team do proactively try to recruit from within the borough. So the main recruitment events and things that we attend to attract apprentices are the ones at Tottenham Hotspurs and the larger events that happen in the local area. Because we are genuinely interested in local residents achieving employment with us.
So also, it must depend where these apprenticeships are advertised,
Yeah,
that would be for people to hear about them. Do we have any work experience?
So work experience
Good.
is not as easy to manage in a large organisation just because the volume of demand is very tricky. So the team that look after apprentices also do look after things like graduates, so they try and incorporate as much as they can with that. But actually what we try to do more of, and actually the team have done more of recently, is engaging with local colleges rather than bring them into the organisation for work experience, which does cause quite a lot of headaches in its own right. Then they're going out to the colleges early to engage them with actually all of the different opportunities that are available within the council. Because in school and college, people think, oh, I want to be this, that, or the other, but actually they don't realise the wide range of careers that are available within the organisation. So that's the team is proactively involved with those specific events and those colleges in the local area.
This question is not related to the, but what's the relation between Haringey Works? Do you have any kind of relationship with them?
Yeah, we do. So the biggest relationship is that Haringey Works fill quite a number of our temporary staff vacancies. So the numbers in the report come to cabinet soon. I can't remember them, but they fill a reasonable portion of our temporary staff vacancies with candidates from Haringey Works. So we work hand in hand with them, and they can also, obviously everybody has access to the jobs that we advertise, and they work hard to fill our jobs with local people.
Any more comments, questions on the reports? Okay, great. We will now move on recommendations set out at page 15 of the agenda pack. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 9 is HR policies. The report sets out the changes to the probation, purchasing, annual leave and organisational change policies to ensure that they are in line with ACAS best practice, any legal or statutory requirements and the council's local requirements. Tanya Pratchett, Head of Employment Reward and Transformation, will introduce this decision-making report, and I will then invite questions from committee members.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Yeah, as you've already stated, these are written in line with ACAS requirements and best practice, and we've already engaged and consulted with trade unions as part of that process. So these have all been agreed by unions in advance. The probation policy is the first one to introduce to you, and there's been some changes to the probation policy, some of them in line with other council policies. So the principles section, for example, this is part of our ongoing review of policies across the organisation, ensuring that those principles are standard and aligned. And we've removed reference to practice notes because we're simplifying our policies. So we're removing practice notes and making the policies more user friendly. And that was part of the paper that we brought to this committee, I think probably around a year ago, in the change of writing those policies. Number of probation review meetings have changed from 6 meetings to 4, and an outline of these can be found at Appendix B of the policy. And you may have questions on that, but ultimately it was felt that there's 6 meetings in a short period of time. There wasn't a lot of progress to report from one to the next, so it was felt that moved to 4 within that 6-month period, and the likelihood of those being completed increases. So one of the challenges as part of probation, time flies really quickly actually, because there's a lot to learn. So it gives the employee the opportunity to settle in and bed into their roles, but also the manager a proper opportunity. That initial meeting, the first meeting is all to introduce them to the role, and actually to review them 4 weeks later doesn't feel fair. So we've moved to 4 meetings to make it more easy to manage for managers, but also enable us to give a more thorough appraisal of their progress in the role. We've included additional wording in respect to the council's duty on dismissal of newly qualified social workers during the ASYE period, and so for the benefit of the committee. A specific programme you have to follow if you're a social worker, which is called the Assisted Study Year in Employment. So that's post your qualification, and there's set things that you have to meet throughout that year. And what we do is we align our probationary policy for newly qualified social workers to ensure that they're getting the support to be able to complete that. But it also means that we have specific guidelines that we have to follow in respect of social work England with regards to reporting if they're not meeting standards. So this policy just enables that update a little bit further. We previously had within our probation policy a full investigation during misconduct and gross misconduct, and that's been changed to a formal fact-finding exercise. Ultimately, sometimes an investigation can take some length of time, and within the probationary period, actually, we feel it's useful for the organisation and for the individual actually to be able to voice their concern more quickly, and for us to investigate that more quickly to reach an outcome that's right for the organisation. We included a new section to provide clarity on the duration of probation. So in the previous policy, we had a 6-month probationary period that could be extended to a maximum of months. We've extended that so that we can extend to a maximum of 12 months, which is in line with legislation and best practice. One of the reasons for that is sometimes 6 months to 9 months actually still doesn't give enough time for somebody to reach that improvement. So it feels unfair for them to be dismissed at the 9-month period if there's still an opportunity for them to reach that standard within that following 3 months. So that sort of levels it up for individuals accordingly. And we've also included the process, and it sounds very straightforward. You might have assumed that it's already being done, but to confirm in writing that people have passed their probationary period. And one of the reasons this is important is because that lack of confirmation just sometimes leaves us in a little bit of a risk. If we haven't confirmed, the organisation might feel, well, we haven't confirmed, so you haven't passed your probation. But from the employee's perspective, of course, well, you haven't told me otherwise, so surely I've passed my probation. So having that confirmation in place just takes away all of that ambiguity for everybody. We have also included the chair of the final probation hearing, which has been changed to head of service. It was previously former assistant director, now director of the new structure from April, and that was causing a delay in getting those hearings completed, which is not fair for anybody. It also changed the number of working days to submit an appeal from 5 working days to 10 working days, and that's in line with other policies, and the communication of the outcome from 3 working days to 5 working days, and that again is due to being consistent with other policies, so things like disciplinary grievance policies, those time frames and delivering the outcome. I'll pause there because I think there might be a question on probation, and then we can move on to organisational change.
So I think most of the probation depends on the organisation itself. So let's say 6 months, just to give an example. And so within 6 months, you have like 4 meetings. In the last meeting, approve whether you're permanent or not. For instance, if you pass the 6 months and that final meeting doesn't happen and you pass that 6 months, will that person be permanent automatically because they passed that 6 months? Because in some cases, that last meeting might be over 6 months, and that will mean, according to policy, that will mean if it's on this policy, that will mean that regardless of that meeting, that person's permanent in the role.
So we've strengthened the process that we go through with managers in this, and in terms of the guidance with this probation policy, in that we would expect them to extend the probation to enable them to hold that meeting, and that has happened on more than one occasion already. Not in this new policy, but in the existing policy, we've had people that have got to the 6 month period and they haven't been able to do that final meeting due to sickness, for example, or other people's absence. They've extended probation by 1 month, and the reason being so that we can hold a final review meeting, and that's why we put in that final confirmation, pass or not pass your probation. But it shouldn't just be left to a guessing game. So ultimately, the managers are expected to either confirm at that 6 month point or extend. Those are the only 2 options available to them. It doesn't then drift beyond that. Yeah.
Just an example of experience in the past.
Yes.
To highlight.
And to be honest with you, it's one of the biggest own goals organisations make, because at the point that they are permanent, of course, you're then into your full and thorough capability process, which can take an extensive amount of time, and we definitely don't want to do that if people genuinely are not going to meet the standards of the work that we need.
So we've still got more of your.
Yeah, no, the organisation change policy is next. And so we've got a real focus on the organisational change policy. I don't think this will be a surprise to anybody in the committee, because obviously we're expecting wide scale change as part of the financial challenges that we have in the organisation. So I just want to highlight some of the key changes, which is the inclusion of the guidance around maternity and new parents regulations. So the rights of maternity and new parents has been strengthened to give them more entitlement during that period. Appeal submissions have been timescales have been changed in line with other policies, as in the previous policy, and we've done clearer outline of the steps required and detailed the outline of proposed selection methods, again, just to make it really clear for everyone that's going through the organisational change that what they can expect from us as an organisation. So those are the main changes to the organisational change policy, and we've done some work already with the leadership team on delivering organisational change with a focus on the people as part of that process.
We haven't, unfortunately, so sorry. We haven't got the report printed, so just one, if you could just tell us the two main points on changes on the.
Yes, no, so the changes that I've just outlined, so the main changes, there's one that's listed on this report that I will make sure that it's added, is so we have made a change to the ring fencing as part of the change policy. So previously, if you put a team into a restructure, everybody could apply for all roles without any question. And in a reorganisation of 100 people plus, that becomes a very difficult process to manage and actually can lead to some unfair selections at senior levels. So what we've done, we haven't taken that option away, because actually our primary intention of the organisational change policy is to reduce the number of redundancies. And what we've done is we've given an option to have a closed ring fence. So where there's a situation where, for example, 6 posts were to go to 4 posts, and there's 6 people in the exact same role, and they're going to 4, it doesn't feel fair that somebody in a completely different role should also be able to apply for those roles. So in that circumstance, we've enabled the closed ring fence to be implemented. So at the beginning of the process, the business partner works with the business, the HR business partner works with the business to decide which is the best ring fence option for that service at the time. So that's your one, it's probably the primary change that's been made. And then the other one, to be honest, sort of the legislative change around the new parents. So the rights of people who are on maternity and new parents to secure a role in the structure, they have priority over all other employees at that time. So we've strengthened that in line with the legislation, to make sure we're legislatively compliant, and we've really clarified the selection methods. Just again, because those are the areas that cause the most anxiety for employees going through that restructure. So those are the key areas of change in that policy. The final one is around the purchase of annual leave. So previously we had a process in place which meant that people could purchase up to 10 days additional annual leave. And we've put in place the option, or we're asking for authority to put in place the option for people to purchase a maximum of 26 days. 26 days annual leave. So it is very generous. And so,
That's 26 days of annual leave.
so the purchase of 10 days annual leave was done on a calculation based on working days across the year. So it had a certain cost per individual. In order to make this more attractive, we've done it based on calendar days across the year. So they can actually buy more holiday for less money, if you like. And the benefit of that is that we think that there'll be a higher uptake, and actually that helps us towards some of our cost savings. So effectively, if everybody took up this offer, we would see our workforce reduced to a 0.9 FTE. That would be a reduction of 10% of our whole workforce bill. In reality, you're not ever going to get that uptake with everybody. People are not necessarily going to be able to afford to do that. But when we looked at the costing, the maximum cost of this would be based on people who already purchase annual leave at the existing rates. If only those people took this up, then the maximum cost it would be to the organisation would be around £17,000. So the likelihood of people taking the offer up is increased. We feel that that's a fair risk for us to consider in order to promote this as a cost saving option for the council.
But if a larger number than expected of people chose to purchase the full 26 days of annual leave, what does that mean in terms of the resource the council has available to deliver the work that it needs to do?
There will be less resource to deliver council services, but the financial situation of the council means that we need to find a way to make financial savings. And doing it this way seems like a better way than cutting jobs.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do, is find every way that we can to make financial savings in a way that continues to deliver services, but that protects employees. And that is what this will do. The reality is that in many jobs, the work remains.
Yeah.
So in jobs like mine, for instance, I'm here to deliver my job. If I have less time to do that job isn't going to change. So I just have to do it more efficiently, better, to solve which things I'm going to focus on. But the council will still save the money because I will be at work for less, being paid for less time, but my job is still there to be done. Now, I take the point that there will be less resource available. In my example of me, and any example you could use, I'll use me because I'm sitting here and it seems fair to do so. But the reality is that we need to find ways to save money. And this is such a way of doing so without cutting jobs.
I appreciate that. There's two additional issues, I guess. The one is the mental health and stress put upon the person that might have that holiday. Because your job still exists. Can you do it with 26 working days a year should you choose to do so? You probably can't. But the other thing is around areas, I'm saying your job isn't critical, but perhaps around social work and so on. I think we already struggle to meet the needs of people around social work and providing that care, and so that's going to be even more difficult to do so. So there'll be effects on the residents as well. I know there's going to be effects on residents because there is less money anyway, but I'm just concerned about perhaps those that are most at risk or most vulnerable.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair point. So this isn't a right, this is an
No.
application process.
So you would then have to look at that and say, well, none of the social workers can buy this.
So
By the 26
people
days
can
every
apply,
year, because-
people can apply and it is reviewed by the manager to decide based on what's in the application if it is appropriate or not. And things like that there are some examples in there that your application is unlikely to be approved if approving it would require agency cover to cover that work. Because what we don't want to do is approve these applications and then require agency cover to cover. So we have taken care of that in the application process. But the balance of risk, in my opinion, is that this is worth trying. And if we find this is a policy of the council, and if we find that actually this has not the effect we wanted, or the impacts are too great, next year we can change it back.
I'm sorry, I think we've gone off the agenda and I'm not sure if you've actually finished your report.
No, we have, it's absolutely fine. So it's fine to take questions. I think that's
Okay, well, thank you for that, but I think the questions need to come through the chair. It's okay, but I think it becomes confusing, especially for people who are watching online. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so part of my question you have already answered. It has to go through the line manager to approve that pay annual leave. So I'm just going to slightly change my question a bit. So for instance, a employee has been approved, let's say 28 days. Can the manager call them back just in case if there is quite a significant gap within the workforce? Is there like flexibility where they can come back to work, let's say after 10 or 20 days? Can they do they have that kind of flexibility or not? Or do they need to, if they bought that annual leave for 20 days, and the manager realizes that there is a kind of the gap is increasing drastically, can they call that employee back to the work?
Once the annual leave's been approved for buying, then the employee is entitled to take the annual leave. Exceptionally, if the manager and the employee agree that the manager doesn't want to take the leave and the employee doesn't want to take the leave, then there is a way in payroll to change that. But once the employee has asked to buy the annual leave, let's say they want to go away with their family on holiday for 3 weeks in the summer and want the extra leave to do that, the council has, once the leave's been approved and the dates have been approved, the council has no right to say, actually, you can't take that leave. But that applies with annual leave as well. That's not specific to just this additional annual leave. That applies to all annual leave.
If say someone wants to take 3 weeks off to do their house up, but then they crash their car and actually need to be at work to earn the money, do you think that could be?
There would have to be a discussion there. What the policy says is that once you've bought the annual leave, you've bought the annual leave. So
I think that should be crystal clear when they intend to buy that annual leave. So just there's, it might write in the policy, but they might not able to. So that might need to be mentioned.
we'll make it very clear. in the
Very clear.
communications.
Yeah.
And I suppose carrying on that is if this additionally purchased annual leave can be carried over between years.
No, it can't.
Sorry, can I I think it's worth noting as part of this discussion that actually intention front loaded with the fact of well-being and all of those different things. So as an organisation, we offer a flexible working flexi time policy, but in reality, people rarely take flexi time because there's that guilt around actually I still need to be available, etc. It's a psychological thing. Whereas if you've booked a day's annual leave, it's almost like permission to actually log off properly. So I would see that the impact of mental health could be a positive thing. And actually, I think there'll be two schools of people that take up this offer. There will be the schools of people who have a wedding coming up or an exciting family holiday, and they think, actually, I want to take that block annual leave, and actually this would enable me to do that, but still be able to take time off with the children during holidays, for example. And then there will be the people who think, I'm going to have that extra 26 days, and actually that will enable me to have a Friday afternoon off, and actually that's beneficial for me to get this sun, etc. outside of the weekend. So I think what we'll see, and we will obviously be monitoring to see the uptake of it. Actually will be interesting to see, where those people come from across the organisation, and perhaps the reason that people are using that lead option. And that will be what we'll come back to this committee a year's time, once we know how that's been taken up, for us to say this is where it has worked, and we're suggesting we take it forward, or we don't for these reasons.
I was just going to ask firstly, does that start from, is it April, your holiday this time? And then do people have to say how much they want to buy upfront at the start of then, or could they get to like July, like, oh, can I buy an extra 5 days?
We have an application window. It's once a year. Everybody has to choose
Right.
an application window because otherwise it's an administrative
And then you
nightmare.
can manage the resource.
And then pay is deducted over a 12-month period.
Right.
So that's how people pay for it over a standard 12.
So it's committed at a certain point, and
Yes.
then you are able to manage the resource accordingly.
Yes.
And new joiners, the rest of the window, wait until the next
Wait
one.
until the next Monday.
And yeah, I actually think having listened to the candidates, I think actually there is potential for it to be really positive to the organisation. I think as this committee, we've voiced some level of concern at various points, but I think that all comes from a very good place about delivery and capacity within services. So I think the thing I'm most interested in is for us to have a paper or a report that comes out here that goes into sort of who is it that's taking it up, how are they using it? Is it, like you said, something like having that Friday? Is it people are doing it so they have one? It could be really beneficial for retaining staff potentially. There are a lot of positives. Some of our concerns are obviously about service delivery, which is completely understandable. So I think that's really positive. Really looking forward to hearing. Well, very supportive. I'm really looking forward to hearing how it goes in the years to know, basically.
And what the uptake is.
Yeah, quite.
Just one last question, which again, I can see lots of pluses, but there'll have to be an equity of who can and can't, who can take of everybody have the same access, won't there? Because I use social work as an example, which was off the top of my head, and they would have to have the same access. So it has to be equitably, and the policy covers that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody can apply.
Yeah, but they can apply, but not everybody will always be fine.
Correct.
So it has to be that it is equitable, that just because the social worker sticks in my mind, they must also have the equal access and consideration and have that time.
Absolutely right. Yes. Yeah.
That discussion with the services around the delivery and how they can cover and all those things.
Yeah.
Those conversations would happen across.
And that would be just in the data as well, when you're looking at who has and hasn't, if not a single social worker has taken it, or B person, which isn't under it's under the area, but you would know what I mean, then that's a flag in those particular areas where perhaps they don't benefit from the policy to the same extent. But we can't tell yet.
I think what will be difficult is to do the deep analysis, which would be really useful to do, is because I think a lot of people who are at the lower paid roles may not be able to afford to do it, for example. So I think probably again what we'll see is the middle level people within the organisation who perhaps have the ability to delegate some of their work, which helps from a resource perspective, but also have that high level of salary, which means that they can afford to forfeit some of that in order to have that better work-life balance. So again, if I was to do some predictions, that would be, I would expect probably PO5 to HC1 perhaps to be the highest uptake in terms of them taking that additional leave.
I do hope that people can use it, and I really look forward to hearing what people say they've used it for and how, and whether it does seem to affect retention and happiness actually.
Yeah.
And we would hope to
Whether
see a
the
reduction in
organisation-
sickness also, actually, because if you're looking forward to that Friday off in 2 weeks, actually perhaps you're able to get over the line for the Thursday when you're not feeling 100%, for example. And again, some of this will be assumption, but I think there's some real possibilities there.
Could reduce burnout.
And not many organisations offers this type of purchase holidays, depending on an organisation that I'm aware of.
No, I think this is sector leading, councillor.
Yes.
I think at the vanguard would be the word I would use.
Excellent. Well, if you could please bring that report back after you've got a whole year's data next year. So I guess after April.
Yeah, will be.
We look forward to it. Or this committee will look forward to it, whoever may be on it by then. I think we've probably finished with that particular topic. Have we got any other questions on the wider report?
That's the end of the policy report, Councillor Johnson. Thank you. So yes, consideration of whether that could be approved.
Yes,
Okay,
agreed.
Reid, do we?
There's sort of, based on what we hear.
I'm really put it to work.
As long as it.
If we have just done that. Okay, well, I think we've just agreed, haven't we, that the recommendation set out on page 21 of the agenda pack is agreed. So, do we have any new items of urgent business? No new items of urgent business. You're going over there?
Yeah.
Because we had the wrong set of papers, Chair. We had the wrong dated papers and we were looking frantically.
It's just the front cover that's wrong.
No, it's not. We've only got the sickness policy and another policy that I remember us discussing, and I thought they'd come back.
Could I just ask everyone actually, as for a point of clarification, really? I didn't have all the papers, and I think if there's not a presentation of the stuff in front of you while you're in the committee, I think I've been like furiously looking through my phone at the report, which is not a great way of doing it. How do other people feel? Do you feel, I know it's expensive to print the reports, but these reports are quite difficult to look at on a screen, actually. What do people think? Do we want to request a paper copy for the meeting, or to be sent to us before the meeting, or what do people feel? Is it necessary?
Chair, and I think they should all be there. I mean, it's a difficult one, I know. But I think we should get all the papers, even if you want cheaper paper, we don't want cheap.
So I mean, our obligation is to send all policies and reports by a set deadline. So we sent everything on the 8th of January. So I don't know whose responsibility it is.
So I can respond to that. So while we do have a requirement, a statutory copy, we do generally submit papers online simply because it is a cost saving measure. But it is up to councillors whether they do want to have a paper copy or not, depending.
Okay, we did have just to be really clear, no, we did have the papers online to read. That's not the problem. The problem is trying to refer, like, because we're not necessarily receiving a presentation that we can all look at while you're speaking.
Yeah.
It is, you do need to be able to refer to these papers during the meeting to scrutinise the reports, really.
Actually present it on the screen.
Just on this one, this is the only committee, well, I'm on two committees, that I get them in the post for. The other one, I get them online, and I will often ask to have a printed copy when I arrive in so that there's no postage. I'd be more than happy, because I live quite near, to swing by and collect them, but I don't see a need for them to be posted to me every time, because that is expensive.
So, I agree with that. But I would like to have a copy to refer to in the meeting if it's not on the screen.
Yeah.
I just comment. So I think it also depends. So if the agenda is quite packed, quite long, and I think that's a significant amount of paper that it needs to be printed on. So I find it. I use computers for quite a long time a day. I find sometimes for me, I find it quite hard to go back on the screen and read rather than I can sit there somewhere. It can vary. It depends, because I spend so much time on screen, maybe 10 hours a day. So, but I do understand that, printing can be costly. I do emphasize I can digest it, if need be, as long as there's a consistency.
Okay, what would people like us to request then?
I would like to not have them posted, because that is expensive. That'd be and this is the only committee where I have them posted.
I'd like hard copies, but I agree with Councillor Barnes, not having them posted, even if they're just.
In the meeting.
At a specific place where we can just go and pick them up, that would be happy, I'd be quite happy with that. Because we do come in on a regular basis, it's just, I think in the past, we always talked about this thing about having cubby holes, so you can pick up your papers, even letters, I mean, at the moment they're forwarded, but it'd be good to have little cubby holes so we can pick up our papers, even if we say exactly where they're going to be. I'm just happy to go to a tray, pick them up.
You could even request, because in the other committee I'm in, sometimes I'll ask if I can pick up a printed copy when I get them. And the office that looks after it will print them out for everybody and ask for them, but not for everybody, just for those that request, because sometimes you want that detail and other times you don't, depending on, as you say, the amount of items to read.
Yes, that's true. I've been advised we could take this conversation offline.
Yeah, so we do that.
And we can, but I think it is something that's worth thinking about. Because we want to be able to give our full attention to this thing. Okay, so the date of the next meeting is going to be April the 3rd.
Yeah, we had this debate earlier, I think. Mark,
Is that correct?
Sorry.
Okay.
We're here, whatever the.
Okay, I think it's going to be April the 3rd. I just want to say thanks very much to everybody for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll send this back.
Yeah, take this off, like, just say individually to Richard what we want then. I definitely want a